Hello Gemini, and welcome to your in-depth monthly horoscope for June 2023 for the Sun or the Ascendant. I'm going to share with you some standout details to begin with, but please stay with me. I will then explore in greater detail all the key influences particularly relevant to your sign. Now, as you come into this month, so the Sun continues its journey in your sign. And ordinarily, when we're in Gemini season and the energy of the Sun is really pouring its rays into your vitality and activities, this would be a time to be very much in the moment. And there can be a degree of that, I feel, but this year, because there's such a collective in your 12th house, it may feel that part of you is trying to be progressive, but another part of you is still dealing with some deeply sensitive strands. There may even be part of you that wants to spend a certain amount of time on your own. And I feel the reason for that is that Jupiter, the planet of growth, is combining with the North Node through the first 10 days. But this can be a huge time of spiritual, emotional and psychological enlightenment and growth if you seize the opportunity. Now, there is going to be a new moon in your sign this month on the 18th. Really exciting if you're wanting to give yourself a dynamic makeover. And with Mercury joining you on the 11th, that's going to be a real asset too. But that new moon holds a little bit of a gotcha, so I need to share that with you too. So please stay with me for more. But please also click on or tap on the subscribe button. This means every time I drop a video, you'll get an alert. Also, if you would like to get your free daily written horoscope fired to your device each morning, totally free, you can sign up for your Sun or your Ascendant or both. The choice is yours. Please see the link below. And if you would like to ascend above this zodiac broadcast and really embrace more serious astrology and the power of it and how it can influence your future so helpfully, if you give me 3 pieces of personal birth data of time, date and place of birth, I can provide for you your life roadmap report. This can help you to get a much more intimate understanding of the patterns that have impacted on your journey so far, but also how you can capitalize on your strength and avoid some of the challenges that may have repeated themselves. Also, my special package of 30% off, you can get your 12-month personal forecast, totally unique to you, which will give you searing insights for the months to come. If you don't know your time, my new solar package works in the same way, 30% off, the life roadmap and the forecast. But this is based on your Sun. And if you enjoy sun sign astrology videos on YouTube, this is going to be something that you easily relate to, but can still give you some incredibly valuable insights. Please see the links below for more. So Gemini, your monthly forecast for June begins with the Sun in your own sign. And perhaps most dynamically, Mars, the planet of drive and passion in house 3, very redolent of the energy of your sign. And of course, Mars is about action, so that gives you a sense of urgency. But that collective in the sign of Taurus is much more inward. So there is a paradox at play in the early part of this month. Now, as I mentioned in the introduction, Jupiter is aligned with the North Node. Once the North Node moves into Aries on the 13th of July, I think it's going to be very, very positive for you. But this phase of the year does give you the opportunity to expand your understanding about some of your deeper motivations, or perhaps make more sense of your past history. So if you're someone who's using astrology or any other spiritual pathway in order to get a clearer idea of that, this can be an incredibly potent time. So essentially we have the Sun, which wants you to live in the moment, competing with the collective in Taurus, which could see you a little bit unsure about the moment because the past is still so powerful. You need to have privacy or quiet And then Mars is puncturing this by saying, look, there's so much excitement here, you've got so much to share, which is so important. And of course, we do have also Venus, the planet of desire, the planet of money, and the planet of relating, in an opposition with Pluto, also through the first third of this month. And for you, they're in the part of your situation that's very much to do with everyday money. So there could be an important conversation that you're going to have during that period of time, or are you going to encounter someone who really makes your pulse race? Because that wouldn't be a surprise at all. Pluto, of course, can be about deep machinations, and Venus can be about where we can be seduced, if you like. And seduction could be a word that you could apply to Venus opposite Pluto across the 2nd and 8th house axes. But the full moon comes along on the 4th and suggests that when it comes to relationships, being tuned in to how other people are seeing things as much as how you see it is really going to be the trick over the following 2 weeks. But then, of course, on the 5th, Venus glides into the sign of Leo, where it's going to be for an extended period right through to the 9th of October. So a really long period of time. The retrograde which causes this extension is for 44 days and begins on the 23rd of July. So for you, the 3rd house is that everyday chatter, which is part of your key being. And so having the svelte, rather charming and gracious energies of Venus means that someone somewhere is going to be hanging on your everyday words, or even how you sing if you're someone who's a performer or loves karaoke, at some point over this next 4 months. And because of the passionate energies of Mars, and because they come together pretty closely as this month draws to a close, a key conversation could bring the curtain down, the celestial curtain down, on June 2023. But you're known as being a very skilled communicator, and I feel that at the start of this month you could feel a bit sluggish, or if not sluggish, a bit preoccupied with this more spiritual dimension, but also at the same time trying to work with the energy which is more urgent and urging you to interact with people. So it's a fascinating set of contrasting energies. Once Mercury arrives in your sign on the 11th, it really will get easier, because Mercury moving through the 12th house is quite challenging. It has a tendency, and of course it's gone through the retrograde and the pre and the post shadow period, so the whole process of the slowdown was just over 7 weeks. And so maybe during that time there was a little bit of reticence to connect with people in the way that you're normally so well recognized for. So I think you're going to be really sparklingly effervescent from the 11th in the way that you're so well known for. But also on the 11th, Pluto inverts in its retrograde into the sign of Capricorn. Now, if you have your sun right at the end of Gemini, that means that there's going to be a quincunx for you. And I feel that for some late Gemini people, there's been a lot of politics in your life over the last couple of years, and perhaps a lot to do with money or longer term money. However, this retrograde back into the sign of Capricorn can also be about very deep transformations. Your sign is known as being able to pivot quickly, to spin around, to flex. You're a mutable sign. I think your skill set, to be honest, is vastly underestimated. Yes, Geminis can flex so much that some people see that as insincerity, and you can have different viewpoints about the same subject on different days, but that just brings that greater sense of intrigue and mystique to who you are. And Pluto, of course, is very much about mystique and can be about what we don't necessarily want to share. But is it the case that maybe some of the deeper stuff that House 12 is being activated by can be complemented by Pluto rewinding into Capricorn, or some of the lessons you learn around transformation, around resources, your connection to others, your devotions or not to others over the last 15 years with Pluto's journey through Capricorn, that's just going to be opened up again. The hatch is going to be raised, and it gives you an opportunity to peer inside. Whereas I feel that Pluto just inching into Aquarius, as it did, 26 minutes in total in those 11 weeks. If you're early born Gemini, that may have actually been really great for you, and you may have felt that you were really opening up. So there may be a little bit more self-analysis or a light that needs to be shone on some darker subjects, maybe even some taboo subjects, maybe to do with your sex life or not, depending on what's going on for you. However, on the 17th, Saturn also goes into retrograde. Now this is really important because obviously Neptune's also in the sign of Pisces along with Saturn, and this is house 10 for you, which is how you connect with the wider world. If you're not completely invested in what you do for a living, maybe it has been a means to an end. Perhaps Saturn rewinding here is asking you some questions. And of course, we're also living in an age where things are changing at such a rapid speed that even if we're feeling that we're evolving, suddenly things can shoot past us. A bit like driving relatively quickly on a motorway and finding people undertake and overtake at the same time, rattling past. And it's like, wow, I thought I was going pretty quick. They're really travelling. And that is how life may seem a little bit for some of us at the moment, I feel. So right through to November the 4th, if you have got some concerns about what you're doing and whether it can work for the long term, you're going to go through a period of analysis, I feel. I have to say, however, that Saturn and Jupiter, Saturn can be about contraction, Jupiter about growth, they're actually in a really positive alliance all through this month within 3 degrees. And why I like that for you is it means that Jupiter's asking you to make the most of a lot of skills and knowledge you've accumulated over a long period of time. So it's in its culmination point in your solar chart, whereas Saturn's in a very visible part, and so a lot of experience that you've gained can be manifested now. So maybe is the combination between the two, despite Saturn's retrograde, suggests that this can be a time when you can receive recognition or praise or see some kind of substantive evidence of a lot of hard work over a long period of time actually shape up, but it might not appear to be very sparkly. Perhaps the progress isn't quite as quick as you would like, or the recognition isn't as great as you would like, or the revenue generated isn't as plentiful as you would like. But I think it's important when these two are balancing each other out in a natal astrology, but particularly a progress chart. The first thing I think I look for is what's the relationship between Saturn and Jupiter. It will tell me if someone, and obviously other planets are equally as important, but these two, because they represent opposite things, if they're set fair to one another, it usually means that that's pretty good for the client. If they're in conflict, that means that maybe things are grindingly slow. So they're supportive to you this month. But here's the big news story. That new moon in your sign is not incredibly supportive to you. So often a new moon gives us a chance to really crystallize our individual hopes. This one could actually be quite an energy depleter because Neptune is pretty well exactly square with the new moon. And because of the way I feel astrology works, I think the whole of week 3 could see your vitality a little bit lower just when you thought it may be about to pick up. I think the way to handle this is that Neptune can distort. So if you're talking to someone about a job, you have to accept that maybe how they describe the opportunity is not remotely anything like the reality. As long as you bear that in mind, that that's how life can be these days. You know, it's not necessarily the opportunity itself, it's more the people around it, the politics of how we do that work, or we have that presence in our local community. If the people side, the communicational side's working well, you can diminish some of the dispersing energy of Neptune. But if it's not, someone could tell you something that on paper seems okay, but actually there are some catches which may not necessarily be particularly obvious, because Neptune can be so, you know, ephemeral. It's not necessarily, you know, if we tried to put our hand on Neptune, it would just pass through it like a mist, but it can be very draining. So just watch for that if you are trying to initiate or set your intentions on a new start. If you're reading that this new moon is going to be amazing for Geminis, well, I think not. I think it's one that you have to be very confining your energies in a very narrow way in order to gain any traction. However, of course, the 21st does see the summer solstice, which ushers in cardinal quadrant 2, which in Western tropical astrology is really important. The year is divided into 4 quadrants of 13 weeks each, and this one is for you in house 2 about the foundations of your world, money, self-worth, but it is clashing with Pluto. So revelations are still possible. You need to be aware, because it's at the end of Capricorn Pluto, so it's a disassociate quincunx. It's going to be about 149 degrees. So just be aware that I feel I would view Pluto as being, in fact, in the last 2.5 degrees of Capricorn, in terms of towards, which is an Indian 12th harmonic astrology, it's actually Sagittarius. So I would say Sagittarius energy can be about splashing money out, because remember the summer solstice is house 2, resources. Just be conscious of that. And also the more expansive energies of Aquarius in your solar chart is house 9, which is very like that Sagittarius energy. So be cautious with resources in the next 13 weeks. But the 28th does see Mercury move into your second house too, which is welcome. You can bring your clarity, your crisp thinking, your intellect to situations around resources. And also from the 27th to 30th, the Sun forges one of the best aspects in astrology, a sextile with Jupiter, which can be fortunate. So the Sun in house 2 with Jupiter in house 12, past efforts, past experiences can pay off. However, Uranus in your 12th house is squaring with Mars in your 3rd house. You could have a little bit of a row with someone during the last 10 days of this month. Maybe it's because you feel that they don't really understand where you are at the moment, or you could find that your own nervous energy is a bit erratic, or you feel much more irritable than usual. Just be conscious of that. But also the Sun forges a trine with Saturn as this month draws to a close as well. Also, that can be very useful as well. So I think some better news around finance towards the end of the month, as long as you're aware that the quincunx with Pluto can tempt you into splashing out. And if it's a more compulsive spending, which is not really to do with necessary costs or practical items that have some kind of fundamental use, steer somewhat clear. So the month begins with the Sun in your sign, that rather sensitive swirling mist of energy in house 12, but the dynamic energy of Mars joined by Venus in house 3. So there's going to be some flirty moments this month, but I feel also some quite psychological ones. So as ever in astrology, you get different layers. I've tried to peel back the layers to help you to see into what the possible opportunities are and some of the challenges. Thank you so much for joining me. I'd be grateful if you would like, comment or subscribe.